Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome. Welcome to the stream. I did not clear my throat before starting the stream, as you can probably tell. So, there you go. So, we're going to start off doing something a little bit different, but also a little bit the same, related to the organization of Hydra stuff. So, in a moment, I will move all this stuff over to my other monitor. All right. So now the art sheet and task sheet are linked at the main page of the Hydra Wikidot. So I can close this out. And we're actually going to start porting some of these issues, some of these bugs, to this area. Good for newcomers. What the hell? Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what to do about those, but I've never used the GitHub issue system beyond trying to get Poicourt to do something with... I think I've like filled out a few issues, but I've never done so from this perspective, this area, so... I'm not really sure how to progress through this one. But... I guess we'll go ahead and... That was pretty epic. Alright. What's up, Veek? It's going pretty well. I'm a little late to the party, but that's alright. Still trying to get back on the wagon. Alright, so... I'm not sure if there should be... Excuse me. I'm not sure if there really should be a comment for some of these. Like, some of these are fairly self-explanatory. I did it yesterday. I did the thumbnail and the timestamps and all that shit. The audio editing. I compiled it all together. I sent it up, and of course YouTube takes ages to process stuff like that. So after I sent it up, I was just I went to bed. I didn't want to like schedule it and have it released without HD or whatever. So yeah, thanks, Ultralis. Dude, I'm excited. Okay, I'm excited to work on Hydra. Particularly because after I'm done with the GitHub error track stuff, I'm probably just going to work on some maps. So, I have some interesting ideas for maps that I want to run by you guys later. But I'm going to stay focused for now. So yeah, what do you guys think? Like, is there really a necessity for a comment for some stuff? Like, maybe the comment really should only be there when the error report demands it. Like, in this case, I don't think that this issue is very... What's the term? It's not very subversive. It's not really the term I was looking for, but that's a fine enough term in this case. Like, I don't think you can take this in a way that means anything else. I'm not sure if I should add... I don't know if that I need to add any more context to this. Add chapters to YouTube video. Yeah, you have to... So what was tripping me up is I couldn't figure out why it was happening for the Legacy of the Void video. series with Mesk. I couldn't figure out why it was like that and not like that for anything else that I was timestamping. And then I realized that you need to put a 000. Yeah, I think we're gonna do that instead of the to-do list, but that's just because it's a bit easier to access. Right now, I'm just trying to figure out what I'm doing with this one. So yeah, I don't think that there's particularly any context necessary here. Trying to think of like what context could I add to help this issue be tracked down. Maybe if I know what hooks need to be added, or like if any external work needs to be done in order to complete it, right? So we could say like path to completion unknown, because I don't know if there's needs to be like a hook for something done or something like that. You know what I mean? So maybe we'll do that. I would like to just be able to like add another field here and say like, hey, in this field tells us like what we need to do to complete it, right? So I guess I'll just add that, like, so that way I can add that later. That's not really what I wanted. Oh, labels. Okay. Yeah, there's going to be a lot of critical ones. I'm sure. Yeah, so actually for the labels themselves, I feel like I should be modifying the numbers that we have here. Okay, so enhancement is like a new feature or request. I don't know if enhancement really fits it though. Like, it should probably be something like new feature instead of enhancement. Like, I don't know why it would be called enhancement, but whatever. All right. Sure. Right. And so like when I do stuff like I don't know what a pull request is in this sense, but what? It's just giving me random colors. God damn it. So I guess I just destroyed my own. Oh no, I saved it over here. All right, so add critical and new feature. Hopefully this will make it a little bit easier to sort through the requests, but I'm not sure. Where am I? Oh yeah, modding wishlist. I don't remember the markdown syntax at all, so that's gonna be fun. Okay. So we'll say new feature. All right, that's all right. Works out. Organization, guys. Skills that I do not have. Organizing men. Oh wait, this is not that. I guess there's no underline in Markdown. If there is, it's not in the default thing there. Man, what a disastrous amount of. I'm gonna assume this works just like Wikidot. I'm sure that will make me very disappointed. I guess we'll do like a space between the examples. I guess there's no nesting. It doesn't really matter in this case, I guess, but. Somebody's mowing the lawn outside, so hopefully you guys can't hear that. Enjoy the video. Oh, I guess I should add a label for like the kind of request it is. And I've got a lot of bugs to port over here. Yeah, hopefully this will be nice and easy for people to navigate if they're trying to contribute. Okay. I guess I should create a label that's like an update or something. Well, I'm glad that you are enjoying mass emailing. It's epic. Um, oh, nice. I see you've kept yourself busy. How you doing, Iquare? I thought you could do some sort of like I thought you could nest these so that like they had multiple things that you could check off or whatever, like multiple steps or whatever. but I'm not sure about that one. Yeah, you got all of the emails because I'm adding issues to it. You should just turn off email updates or whatever. Tested Flingy Extender and moved it to RW Law because you originally wanted to. When are you going to add new units like Casual Colony after Flingy Sprite Image Extenders are finished and tested? So, yeah, I would say after we've got a good understanding that the extenders for Flingy's sprites and images are all set, we can definitely start adding more new stuff. But we can't really add that much new stuff because I probably only have like a small handful of unit IDs, right? So I think it would probably be better to, like, we can certainly add some new stuff. I'm not saying we can't, but at some point sometime soon, we're gonna have to extend the unit limit, like the unit data array. Oh no, we do not have enough unit IDs for Hydra. Maybe for Overlord, but not for Hydra. Not even close. I still have to add like 30 more units to the dock. We do not have enough unit IDs. I mean, that's not even considering the champion unit IDs that are, in theory, going to have to replace heroes. The operative unit IDs that are, in theory, going to have to replace heroes. Like, there's tons of shit that we need to add. There's tons of stuff. So we're definitely going to need to extend that array. But it's all right. One thing at a time. Yeah, well, the reason why you weren't getting them before is because I wasn't adding issues before. I'm only now porting all of these issues over to the page. You meant the current unit IDs in new game state doc? Well, yeah, because the doc doesn't have everything that we're going to be adding. There's, like I said, there's probably like 30 more units that I have to add. And again, that's not including the operatives, the champions. I probably have to add additional aberrants. How many weapons do we even have? I thought, don't we only have like 230? We'll probably have to do a lot of hooking then. Yeah, I see somebody's already stopped watching just so that they don't get the emails. I respect that. Tech. I don't even know why people. I don't even know why GitHub has the watch thing. I think it only shows you, or it only sends you notifications regarding the fucking, uh, like email updates regarding issues and stuff. I don't think it has anything to do with. Oh, there's been an update to the like. I don't think you can watch just for pushes. You know. Not that you would want emails for that anyway. I don't know. Maybe it makes it easier for you to find it, and if you go to like the GitHub main page or something. Okay. When the remote is selected, that's basically the same thing that I was just saying. Really, I would class this as a bug, so I'll probably just edit the title or something. Oh, 129. Okay, never mind. Oh, that was you? That's pretty funny. I thought we only had like 230, but I don't know why. I thought we already had that many. Well, 255 will be a decent amount for the time being. Hopefully that'll be enough. Man, there's so many more to do. I think I'm maybe halfway done, but probably not. Yeah, that's that. At least we were able to fix the lurker thing. I found out that it was just me not configuring the weapon correctly, so goofy. So lurkers are no longer dealing damage to allied units. Enjoy whatever the hell is going on in my background. Holy moly. My air conditioner working overtime. I guess for labels, I should probably change one of these. You opened. Okay, so that's that. Okay. All right. Fix lurkers. Coming. Again, I thought you could do like nested chunks or something. I thought you could do something like adding an issue to this. Like adding multiple issues or something like that, but I don't see it. Like if I go to the PyMS GitHub and I go to issues. Yeah, so there's like sub issues here. Right? What are these? I think the Azazel might require physics lab, but I'm not sure. I kind of want them to maybe require a control tower, or maybe vessels will require a physics lab instead. Because I want the vessels to be like a more out there one. Destroyed. Oh, add a task list. It's right there. I'm not sure how to mark it as done though. What am I looking anyway? I'm looking at GitHub mark task list done. Oh, okay. It's X. Okay, that's nice. Now that I know how to do that, I'll probably update some of the other ones. Did I really write 32p instead of 32px? That's pretty funny. Yeah, the weapons platform is going to be pretty nice. I guess I just won't even bother putting this issue up because it's not actually in the thing there. I don't even remember how. You heard you wanted to... No, I removed those icons, the buttons, so that we wouldn't have people thinking that they were implemented. That's all I did. Yeah, maybe units should be able to... should have to fasten their seatbelts or something. Yeah, I could see that happening. That could be really exciting. So I don't want to remove the upgrades, but it's something that we just don't have the ability to implement yet, or we haven't implemented it yet for whatever reason. So, like, obviously the heat shield thing is like we need to rewrite the whole unit structure or something. So it's going to be a while before we get around to that. But yeah, I also had to take another look at the bug here. It looks like I don't lose energy from controlling a Zergling. Okay, yeah, so it's... What else do we got here? Alright, I think that's it for now. I don't see anything else that I would absolutely require. I'm just going to go ahead and delete the duplicate one. And we should be good. Let me guess what this is. When I see a million screenshots from Kian because he's getting all these emails. Epic. Just gotta wait for Visual Studio Code to finish starting up here. Alright, so where's this, is it in Data Extender here? If I were to take a look. So if I were to try to do... Say I'm trying to add in my image extender, right? So would I do something like static ref image extender... like that. I would throw that in there. Now I'm taking a look at everything else you got in here. Data extender. Get address list, size. Okay. Did I do our local? Oops. Didn't even see that somehow. It's just a typo. Okay, so here we have sprite extender. Okay. This is a pretty large thing here, man. Yeah, I'm looking at it right now. It's quite large. Yeah, I think until GraphQuery comes into play, we'll probably need some sort of maybe a config option or something that we can use to say like DAT requirement equivalence. And it'll basically be like a one step removed. It's soft code, but it's in a plugin level. You know what I mean? So I think that's probably the best way to do it for now until we end up having GraphQuery support. Unless you think GraphQuery support is so close that it won't matter that much, then we can just do the much more quick and dirty hard code one and then eventually fix it up later. So if I were to try to do something similar to this, I'd be doing... I don't know how much of this is meant to be like... Oh yeah, so include envision is... These are like all of the things that are related to images, right? Oh. So in this case, I could literally copy the whole thing over. And just paste in... Or I could paste it and then replace it with all of the image entries. Okay. And so do these need to be... Are these listed somewhere already, the image values? Or should I be taking a look at the DAT files? And just writing the definitions in my own? Get address list function. Is that in here? Inside the data extender? Or is that somewhere else further up? I thought I saw something like that. I saw get flingy data, but I don't see get sprite data. Oh, get address list. But it's inside data extender. Okay, so I should actually be looking at, for example, data extender find get address list in here. Oh, here we go. What's up with these +2s? The Starcraft 1 manual has some reference images, but a lot of them times they're completely different from the units, or significantly different in some way. But I think like the Brood Warrior ones, for example, like the Medic, the Corsair, and the Valkyrie, I think are all seen. Lurker as well. Those are like accurate to the sprites. But for example, the Zergling that they show in the manual is completely different. No, there was a +2 next to all of the addresses. Like, you see how it's +2, +4? I'm glad that didn't give me any colorizing at all. Yeah, I think I... Where's that special overlay? I don't know why that's over here, but... Special overlay index? I don't know what's up with that. Well, there's nothing here for the images.grp file then. Do I even need to list it? Right, I was already starting on the the image values thing. So I guess we would do... Well, I see turning graphic, which is graphic turns, clickable, GRP file, draw func, remapping, useful iScript, iScript header, draw if cloaked, image.dat overlays, which are all these. I see special landing shield, liftoff damage. Oh, it looks like another landing? Or I got the wrong one the first time. Oh, there's 2 entries for landing, which is weird. Attack overlay is not ever used in assembly. I just searched the attack overlay setup. Oh, never mind. I was wrong. Alright, hold on. Bookmark line. Mark all. Search. Bookmark. Copy bookmarked lines. It's just that I never ended up getting it for whatever reason. Alright. Okay. Yeah, so attack overlay. Alright, so we got everything. Well, that much is done anyway. Not sure why it's clickable. It's supposed to be clickable. It's not missing those, it must just be late to the party. Okay, so we've done the struct side of things. And now I'm looking at... Alright, so you said I'm going to have to manually put in the instructions for every one of these, right? So if I copy-paste this into here, and I look for... Start changing stuff around. Alright, so I'm looking at this, and I'm seeing image extender, image values. And this is where I would need to write in all of the fields that I just wrote into the... Oh, right, I see what happened. Alright. This is where I would need to write in these fields, though. So I'd have to say, like, GRP ID, iScript ID, this is where it makes sense to actually copy this over. And paste it somewhere else so that I don't have to keep toggling through all these. Graphic turns. Draw if cloaked. Clickable. Is full. iScript. Okay. So then I would do kind of data entry is pretty epic, man. All right, that's done. What do we even have in here? Put it in. Wait. HP bar is what? Useful as script. Oh, this is where we need whack vars down there at the end. Okay. And then this is going to be the assembly stuff. Not too difficult, honestly. Hopefully I didn't miss anything. Overlay. 1, 2, 3. Keyboard stream, baby. One, two, three, four, 6. Yeah, that makes sense. So if there's no instruction that's related to the particular part of the image value, what do I put? Do I even leave it? Do I even do anything with it? Hey, it's not what I wanted you to do at all. Dude, why does that keep happening? Who in their right mind control... What is it? Control comma? Open settings? Why? Who the fuck would do that? I'm not sure if I actually need to do just the basic overlay one. Like, it's just overlay. I don't know if that's required, but I guess I'll add it. It's a little weird, though. I guess it's just like an array of all overlays that exist, but I don't know. That's weird. So it looks like liftoff dust, landing dust, special, damage, attack, shields. iScript ID, draw off cloak, useful iScript, GRP file, is turnable, is clickable, RLE function, remapping. So yeah, the overlay, the extra overlay function that I added in here probably doesn't need to be tracked then. So I'll delete that. Reduce confusion in the future. And the duplicates from before, probably also something I can safely ignore. All right. Well, I suppose that's enough rust for one day. Okay, I'm going to take a quick BRB, and when I return, we'll be getting some work done on, I think, the second Protoss mission. But like I said earlier, I want to talk about maps in general. So maybe we'll get some work done in a different context. All right, BRB. Oh yeah, that's right. I wanted to do some other corrections here. Some other extensions here. Probably a few other things that need to be done for this one. There was some stuff here that was like lift off, move attack. I'm trying to think of like what other building morph. There we go. Okay. So that's good. I don't remember if there was another list here. No, I don't know. All right. So I've been thinking a little bit about the way that I want this sort of thing to go, and for sure, some of the changes that we are going to be making to the campaign missions. Well, let's just say that they are... They're out there, man. They are out there. So, for a long time, I've wanted to make it so that we have access to much longer games in Hydra. That has been a focus. So, for example, I've always wanted missions to last like I want the minimum expectation, even in the early missions, to be that you're going to be playing this game for about a half an hour. That was sort of like my initial thought process. And that's what informed the addition of all of the tech tree options in many respects. Like, not all of them, but it was something that was like a grounding aspect where I looked at, for example, the premise of a lot of these missions, and I said, hey, we might have missions that last less time than 30 minutes, but it should probably take you about that time to really claim victory over your opponent. And I don't mean like hunting down their last structures. And the 30-minute mark is really kind of arbitrary, but the idea behind it is that we have access to the ability... Oh, check out my broken tile here. I can tell nobody ever scouted Sienna because they would have reported this. Goofy. But yeah, I mean, I look at it like I want the ability for players to be able to genuinely be interacting with the game's systems for about a half an hour before they're able to win. Now, the early drafts of all these missions usually end much sooner. And I think part of that is because like either the AI was too good or too bad. Like the play, there's like a lopsided team balance where like when Connor was playing it, it was like ridiculously easy for him to destroy the enemy. When some of the weaker players were playing it, they would just get rolled over anyway. But beyond that, it's like assuming all players are playing well, what would allow the game to last that long? You know what I mean? And I think a lot of the maps don't really provide the kind of environment for that kind of gameplay. So for like the first order of business is to establish the idea that like here's why I think it will be better for the gameplay loop, the design philosophy of the whole thing will be better if I allow large scale maps. So I'm not saying that there's every sort of no rush protection in there for players to never be able to cheese the enemy by doing some early strategy to try to kill off one of the players. But the nature of team games and the nature of the maps will optimally, ideally, service a longer match time. There'll be enough expansions. There'll be distant enough rush distances so that you have to really make your early action count. It's not so easy to continue to reinforce your forward base. Or your not necessarily forward base, but your action, like your front lines. If you're making your front line the enemy's main in a super early stage of the game, the map distance, the rush distance between players is going to stop you from being able to do that unless, like, you can't do that if you're not skilled, basically. So, in many respects, that's what I'm like the thrust of a lot of what I'm talking about here. And the reason why I think this will be better is because you get to interact with more of the game's systems more often, right? So your experience playing the RTS side of the game, which is really the game, is more consistent. You are more consistently experiencing RTS gameplay as a result of these changes, is the thought process anyway. It could come out that I'm wrong about that assessment or whatever, but I look at it and I think if I'm playing the game only for 15, 20 minutes, even if I win, it's probably not as satisfactory as if I had to invest my time to demonstrate my skills at all stages of the game, not just the early game, not just some sort of like 2-base all-in or 3-base all-in, not just some sort of early cheese that my opponent didn't react to very well. Like, I still think those should be strategies, and you should still be able to show your skill with early aggression, or just your early action in general. If it involves attacking somebody, then that's great, and it should be possible. That's like definitely a strong opinion I have. Precisely because that's kind of my playstyle. I like doing early action. I like attacking in the early game. But I also think that for one, that should not be the only way you can win. You should also be able to decide to go for a more macro-oriented focus or a tech-oriented focus in the early game. So either like, I mean, you wouldn't really see this as Zerg because of just the nature of the race, but like a 1-base spike up to tier 2. So going all the way up to like Robo Facility or Citadel of Adun or something before you even expand, something like that. I could see an argument for something like that. And I want that to be a strategy that is valid and can find success if you execute on it well. And I think that's a fine way to take a look at it, really. So the early game should definitely matter, but it should also not be the be-all, end-all. Like I said, you shouldn't win or lose the game in the first 10 minutes unless you made a mistake or your opponent made a mistake. Like, unless there's a lot of mistakes stacked up against each other. That's how it is in Brood War as well, but obviously in 1v1, the maps are smaller, there's less players, so games still end in their early game is like the first 5 minutes or first 6 minutes or something. It's not like the Hydra early game, which I would like to go for all the way up until like maybe 10 minutes or so. And this is I'm saying this despite the fact that I've allowed players to ascend up the tech tree a lot quicker. It's like a lot more straightforward for them to do that. That's because the early game really will result in the early game probably will end when somebody hits tier 3 tech, not when somebody gets their first expansion set up or gets their third production structure. You know what I mean? So like when somebody hits tier 3 tech, usually, unless they're like really rushing for it, that's probably going to mean that we've entered into the mid game. And when somebody hits tier 5 tech, when all that stuff is implemented, that'll be when you see stuff that's a bit more like the experience of seeing Hydra's end game. So I'm conflicted because of the fact that, for one, a lot of this stuff is not implemented yet. So I can't really make any determination on its quality. And that's fine. Like, I'm not really that concerned about that. Like, that's not really a big source of conflict, but I do recognize that it's there as well. The real big inner conflict that I have is coming from the idea that some of these early game maps in the early stages of Hydra are so small and have so many rush distance, such a small rush distance, that you won't really get to experience anything close to the Hydra late game, or even really much of the Hydra mid game before the maps end. So while I would like to demonstrate what the Hydra mid game really looks like in every single match, which is why I was targeting the idea that it's probably going to be around 30, 35, 40 minutes before you win a map in the early game, or before you fully lose it, if you're playing well, and assuming everybody's playing well, you're probably not going to see a resolution to the map until around the half-hour mark, maybe even a little bit later, even in the early missions. That was the initial goal, because that's about the amount of time that I had in mind for players to not only achieve the mid game area, like I said, tier 3 tech, but also like obviously you can get to that around 10-15 minutes, but the idea is that you've had time to use those tools that you've unlocked for a considerable amount of time. You've had time to contend over expansions and to try to hold your ground and push into enemy territory and so on and so forth. Like you get a good amount of time to experience the core gameplay loop of the game. And the maps don't really facilitate that right now. The maps, because there's stuff like this where Randall and Arak are right next to each other, because stuff like in the first Terran mission where you got Arak right next to the Magistrate and you got, it's very compact. There's not really a whole lot of space. Because more obviously, the first Zerg mission, it looks like this, where you've got 2 Zerg right next to each other, 2 Terran right next to each other, a Protoss right here, and none of, the rush distance is almost non-existent in this case. This map is only 160 by 128. So, in cases all like those, right, even like the first Protoss mission where Arak and Phoenix are right next to each other, but Arak is also dangerously close to Artanis, and, these other 2 Zerg are much more farther apart. Like, the spacing between Dagoth and Phoenix is probably really, the smallest spacing that there ever should be in any of these maps. While the spacing between Dagoth and the Executor in the bottom left-hand corner, or Artanis in the bottom right, that's probably the spacing, the average spacing that should be there. And sometimes it should be even larger, depending on the situation. Yet, in this particular case, as this map demonstrates, you get half that spacing between Arak and Phoenix. You get around half that for Gorn and Phoenix, and obviously around half that for Arak and Artanis. The spacing between enemies probably should not be so similar in that respect. So like the way that it is. And so I'm not really sure how to structure that, right? Because a lot of the times I'm building the maps with the idea that maybe a player is surrounded, like Phoenix or Randall in the first Terran mission. And maybe that's fine for that map, but again, the spacing is what's the problem. So then we enter into the sort of the logic, right? Where, the logical course of action to correct for this observed issue would be to either concede that the early missions are going to be resolved much sooner, which really doesn't sit right with me. For one, it's a concession, and for another, I don't think it provides you with a solid, fundamental experience of what the project offers. If we're going back to the conversation I had about tutorials in the most recent DADCA and in that first Starcraft campaign playthrough video, my main concern there is okay, they don't really teach you anything. They teach you a bunch of bad habits, if anything, right? They allow you to win missions without actually exhibiting skill. Well, I don't think that you'll be able to win Hydra missions without exhibiting skill, but you will be able to win them without really experiencing the core gameplay loop of Hydra, or the intended gameplay loop of Hydra. And that, to me, is a design failure, because it allows players to win without expressing the kind of skill I want to reward. Now, obviously, that's a bias, right? Saying that I want to reward a certain kind of skill is certainly a bias, and I'm making no bones about that. But at the same time, you got to keep that in mind, right? You got to understand that there's a considerable degree of the experience, a considerable portion of the experience of Hydra that I think players will not end up experiencing. Not even necessarily because they're not deliberately opting into it, or because they're not open to it and they're trying to end the game sooner so that they don't have to play the late game or the mid game, but because the maps themselves do not really support that kind of behavior. As many expansions as there are in a lot of these maps, despite this spacing issues, there probably still needs to be even more expansions, right? I think a lot of the design philosophy of my maps, especially the maps I made before I practiced melee map making, came from a place where I didn't fully understand how quickly maps or bases could be mined out, and how swiftly AI were able to take control of the map, as well as players were able to take control of the map if they were playing well. I didn't understand a lot of core, fundamentals about the game, basically. And when I practiced melee map making, it opened my eyes to a lot of that stuff. And then more recently, during these fraud nights, as I've seen myself improve as a player, I'm realizing that a lot of the maps don't really facilitate the same kind of gameplay that I would be looking for, or that, a lot of the maps that I've made in the past just. I'm not even talking about like mineral layouts or anything, but I think that they make mistakes on more fundamental aspects, especially spacing, but also considering like tactical decision making and providing tools for both sides of an engagement, and that sort of thing, right? And the only way, like I said, the one way that I could resolve this is just by conceding and saying, all right, yeah, some of the early maps are going to teach you the wrong things or not teach you the right things, as they're not going to put as much of a stress or as much importance and gravitas on the right things, the things that are going to help you most in Hydra's later missions. So they're not necessarily teaching you the wrong lessons, but they aren't teaching you all of the good lessons that they could be giving you. Right? They're not imparting all of the knowledge that they could be imparting to set you up for success later on. And I would liken the end result to something similar to Starcraft, where you just get like a random mission later on that's a noob killer. And it's because, the AI actually attacks you because there actually is AI. And previously you didn't have to do anything. You were babied the whole time. Now, in the context of Hydra, the early missions, they don't baby you. They still expect you to play well in order to win. But because of the rush distance being so slow or being so low, because of the situation that we find ourselves in with the current setup of AI, and even the perceived changes to the AI later on where they'll be able to play well micro-wise, I'm still pretty sure that the end result will be that the player just doesn't end up getting their like most players who beat the early missions are probably not going to have experienced the mid game, the late game. They're not even going to necessarily have the tools to conceptualize what the mid game and late game look like for Hydra because they just haven't experienced them yet. And so, similar to that StarCraft issue that I brought up in the first episode of the playthrough, I feel like that kind of thing would happen with the current missions of Hydra, which leads me to the point that I'm trying to make, which is I really don't think that these missions are going to be the end result. Like they're not going to be the final missions that ship. I'm probably going to take the existing ideas that I have for like art direction, for environmental storytelling, for setup, for like, this player is in the middle and they've got, this player's in the bottom middle. I'm probably going to take those as like rough guidelines and just redraft the maps to be much bigger with more appropriate spacing for the number of players and more appropriate expansions for the number of players as well. I think it's just like a natural result of making the maps, for one, before I even really bothered with melee map making. Like a lot of the maps were, like I said, made before I really had a good understanding of what that would look like. But also for, generally speaking, I think it's a byproduct of me just learning more about map construction in an RTS sense, regardless of the melee context. So, oh yeah, how are you liking the campaign videos, the playthroughs? Hopefully, I'm giving you enough analysis there for it to be worthwhile. The other side effect, knock-on effect of this approach is that I'll probably hit the maximum map size much sooner than I previously expected, which means we're definitely going to need to extend the maximum map size. But I could have seen that coming. That means we're going to need to do a lot of rust. Whole lot of rust. Would be really nice to get more players in too, but I heard that that's even more arduous than extending the number of units and stuff. We'll see. Daggeth and Phoenix will eventually start out with more. I was just looking over this stuff because I was talking about making some radical changes to the maps that we already have here. Basically remaking them entirely. I talk about that in the first video. The one of the main reasons that I don't think I mentioned in the first video was my old playthrough of Starcraft was very poor quality, and not just video quality, but my commentary was not good at all. And I wanted to do a better job with basically the flagship game of my channel, right? Like the game that is most important to me in theory. And I also thought recently that it might help me understand how to improve the situation for Hydra maps, like the in-game gameplay storytelling. Because getting a more up-to-date recent experience with those maps, what the original maps were like, would definitely assist me in I think anyway, in theory it would assist me in that sort of thing, figuring out what we're doing for what those maps are gonna end up being. I wonder if I missed any others. Probably not, but doesn't hurt to check. Otherwise, I wanted to do it just because I thought that I would be able to provide better analysis than most people provide. All right, cool. All right. So I'm going to BRB yet again, and when I get back, I will actually start getting to work on some maps. I'm really not sure if I want to start working on reimagining those maps again, or what. I think I'll try. I'll try T01, because I was already gearing up to work on some AI for that map. So I want to try to reimagine that map in particular. It'll be a nice experiment in like improving the spacing and pacing of the map. But also, of course, it'll set me up for success later on when I decide it's time to get some work done on some AI. So when I return, we'll be doing that. Exactly, Mutas Dozens. Blight. Welcome. Mwah. Destroyed. So, time to redraft this sucker. What's our map size here? Oh, probably help if I actually make the map. So what's this map give us? All right, so got the basic setup done. I think I'll probably have Randall be situated still in the middle of the map, but a little bit closer to the starting locations of the Terrans. But the other trick here is, I mean, really, it's not that much of a. Well, I guess the height being, what is that? 64 different or? Yeah. So the height's 64 tiles larger. It's like 1.5 times as tall. Whereas the width is only 48 tiles wider. And that is like 3.666. So yeah, it's not really that much of a difference. I don't know what percentage that would be. It's like 1.3 times. A little bit less, like 1.28 or something. Oh, yeah, like 1.27. Yeah, like 1.272 or something like that. So that's it's not as significant of a difference, right? It's like a well, we can like round down a little bit and say it's 125% wider, 150% taller. Still a pretty big difference, but like the issue that I'm running into here is that we're already in the 220s. Like the maximum size is only 32 pixels higher than 224. So if this is the first map, we're definitely going to need extended map sizes, like almost certainly. Because this is only a 3v3. Like the next map will probably have to be at least 256 wide and probably at least 224 tall. What's up, Balethal? So yeah, I'm not 100% sure how I'm going to schedule that one out. So I think what I'll do is I'll have the center of the map converted into this nice, spacious, high ground area with a stacked level of high ground on it for another base that can be taken, as well as like a nice room, like tactical area that you can use to like sort of open out into the rest of that high dirt area, right? So we're talking like a pretty significantly large part of the map. You know, like something like this. And on this large mountainous area, more towards the south of it, you'll have Randall's base. Right, so I guess it'll probably be even bigger than that. Trim the sides a little bit over here. I think I'll rely a little bit more on water as well for the sake of the lower paths. And I probably want most of the high ground surrounding the mountain to be structure and have like just a little bit of high dirt in some of the other places, right? So like the idea being, okay, you've got this like mountainous area and most of the rest of it is like man-made. So this is like an aesthetic decision, really. It's not something that I'm super worried about otherwise. But it is something that I think will lead to some general improvement. It's like we got a little bit of natural stuff going on over here, right? And I certainly could fuse this up so that it's its own little pathway here, which I might do. So what's going on with you anyway, Beotha? How you been? How are things? Well, better than the alternative. I'm gonna extend this down a little bit so that there's some closure to the water. So we, again, be like a natural little barrier. Maybe something like this to start looking like a bridge. Yeah, we could probably fit one over there. Oops. There we go. You actually. Is that the word of the day? Is that the word you just learned? Oh, right. I forgot. Asphalt doesn't exist in this tile set natively. I somehow forgot that I added that feature. It looks so natural to me. Hey, did you just pick the fucking tile? Jesus Christ. Alright, so we got a nice little outline there of what we'll be looking at. Spammed Fant units. As an infantry? I mean, that is basically my superpower. So I like that idea. Trying to consider some of this stuff here. Yeah. Well, I was just thinking too, like Fraudcraft, and then the expansion pack, Todd Wars, or something. That's like League of Legends balancing, just give them a lot of feature creep. Or utility creep. Yeah, dude, Todd Wars. Yeah, they don't know what to do, man. And it's not their fault. Game design is pretty hard, you know. You can't just design systems that work. It's too difficult. Why would I ever rip Skyrim assets? Gross. Don't make me look at Skyrim again. I just can't handle it. Yeah, true. Skim my rim. Wow. Definitely wasn't gonna. I've heard Skyrim job, but not skim my rim. I don't know what that. That sounds like you're signing up for some torture. Don't want to think about that. So what else are we gonna go ahead and slap together here? Yeah, that could be fine. Just the resources in there. No. Glad you enjoyed the callback. Destroyed. A lot of that stuff is just straight up, yeah, like obscure references. Big surprise there, huh? I've never done that before. Not my MO at all. Alright, I feel like we're getting somewhere here. Oh yeah, I've got to do this in order. I forgot. That's stupid. Just quickly adding these to the brush palette so that I don't have to go hunting for them all the time. All right. Should go hunt down the extended one too, though. I know it exists somewhere. And the north-facing ones, actually. Welcome back. Yeah, I was considering the fact that I'm not really pleased with how the maps have shaped up as far as the gameplay pacing is concerned. Like, the first map tends to end, all of the early maps for Hydra seem to end around like the 15-20 minute mark. Well, maybe they'll go all the way up to like a 30-minute mark or whatever, but it feels like you don't get, the time kind of thing is irrelevant. The issue is you don't get to experience the end, like the mid game or late game stages of Hydra's gameplay. The same thing is true of our Fraud Night matches. Usually those end within like way before 30 minutes, unless it's like a free for all, in which case most people are out of the game by the late game stages. But I want people to have to learn how to play mid game and late game Hydra within the first couple of maps. I don't think you'll get to late game in most cases because late game involves like tier 5 tech tree and stuff. A lot of that stuff isn't even implemented. But I think that a large portion of the player base should have some idea of how the late game might go based on the limited late game experience they have, and also some idea about their, like, they should definitely be comfortable with mid game by the time that they've beaten the first couple of maps in any of the campaigns. And because of that, I definitely need to improve the maps, because the maps are one of the biggest things that hold that back. I didn't realize how quickly bases would mine out, and I didn't realize how important it was to have better spacing, usually longer spacing, between bases. So a lot of the times I would be building these maps, and if you think to like obviously the entirety of the first Zerg mission, but also like the second Terran mission, it has an example of this where Arak and Randall are right next to each other. So one of them will probably die within the opening 10 minutes. And I didn't like put 2 and 2 together about that. So those are like really obvious extreme cases. But then there's just the general pacing of and spacing of the map, but like pacing and spacing, unfortunately they sound very similar, but they're both problems here. So like they actually are both things that I mean to say. But it's I look at it like it's a big issue with regards to how the overall experience of the game ends up being. Like, you just don't learn. Like, the game doesn't force you to express the right kind of skill, if you know what I mean. I think if you're really, really good at rushing and cheesing, maybe you can get through the first significant portion of the maps, like the first half of maps or something in the early stages of the game and win before 30 minutes. But you need to be really good. Like, you need to really earn that. That strategy is not going to work in all the maps. That strategy is not going to work really in any of the maps unless you're really good. I still want it to be rewarded. Like, I'm not saying you can't get success. You can't find some success with that, but you can't usually end the game because of it. Like, you would put yourself in a better position because of your early aggression. You wouldn't outright win the game because of it. You would still need to do other things and scale into the mid game. You know what I mean? Well, T01 was always kind of a tutorial. It sets the first mission that you ever experience in a product sets the expectations that you have for the rest of the product to deliver upon. It basically it gives you a bar, and it says this bar is how difficult and how high quality the experience you're going to have in the rest of the campaign should live up to. Like, we should at least reach this position. We should probably be going well beyond it as well. Here's our opener. Here's us kid gloves pulling punches a little bit, so the AI is not going to immediately devastate you. I mean, I say this in terms, these are relative terms. Like, if you're not as good as me at the game, you'll probably die in the first mission. But that's the whole point, is like, part of that tutorialization, part of that information control is precisely the idea that you don't have the ability to win the rest of the game unless you can beat the first mission. That's kind of obvious, but most of the time, beating the rest of the campaign doesn't really require skill, like in the original campaign, right? Whereas beating Hydra will require skill. So beating the first mission should require some small, like, it should require a significant fraction of the skill required to beat any map. Like, the difficulty that you experience in map 1 should still be reflected in the, like, what's challenging about all of the maps, if that makes any sense. It's establishing consistency. It's establishing ground rules that we're not going to stray from in the rest of the campaign. That's basically what I'm after. Oh, I also missed some YouTube chat questions. You like how Blizzard is treating the Protoss like the gift that keeps on giving? Yeah, I don't know why they don't do that more with like Terran factions. Like that would make more sense because Terrans are more like characterized. Well, humans in real life are more exploratory, so you'd think that that would be more there. Isometric and pixel-based games are really unappreciated in mainstream. It's pretty weird. You think companies would leap at the opportunity to cut development costs? Yeah, well, I think the issue is like the casual people who like even the press outside of games. So if you look at like the Joe Rogan podcast or something, like that's a weird example to bring up because he's even though he plays like Quake and stuff, he's not really a gamer. Like he's not super involved in the gaming industry. He's probably a consumer of some games. And he's got like that VR fetish and stuff. So, but he's like not really the same market that most people are trying to appeal to. But because people like him still like feed back into they still interact with the industry because they're like talking about games and stuff. He always talks about graphics. I don't think he's alone in that. I think a lot of people always look at like the eye candy. They always are looking at that. So you don't get eye candy out of isometric games, even if they look really good, even though they don't age poorly. They don't age nearly as poorly as 3D games. But because of the nature of them, because they're not as eye-grabbing, because they don't immediately make you, like, they don't fill up the headlines with all of the talk about the graphics. That's why, more or less. So, like, that's one of the reasons why they're never really looked at. It's because that does account for a not insignificant, a non-trivial amount of their sales. If I had to guess, anyway. Should Hydra be used as a substitute for the normal campaign? I don't mind people considering it that way. Like, I just... Hold on, I gotta change the song I'm listening to because I'm dying. I don't mind the idea that people would use it. Like previously because I'm targeting a much higher skill level than Blizzard's campaigns ever targeted. I was previously pretty convinced that I wouldn't like I would never recommend somebody like this is like my old thought process. I was thinking that I would never be able to recommend somebody to play Hydra without playing. I don't know why it's in that sprite layer instead of Terran or terrain. Okay, now it is. I don't know what the fuck. I was in Doodads. That's why. Previously I never would have recommended that they play Hydra without first playing Starcraft in some other capacity. Now I think you probably will be able to play this instead of Starcraft. It's just that you'll need to spend a lot of time on the first mission so that you can build up your experience with playing the game. I talked about this in my recent video series about StarCraft. Like, I'm playing through the original StarCraft campaign. I'm giving some commentary, and I'm analyzing the maps and stuff. One of the things that I mentioned in the tutorial spiel about, was it within the first half hour of the first video, I mentioned that one idea that I think could be useful for doling out information at a reasonable pace without breaking the fourth wall in an obvious way would be to enable some sort of, like, extended tooltip mode that would... Like when you know how when you mouse over, for example, I'll pop up like I'll find an SCV, and then you see it says move, and right now it just shows you the hotkey, right? Like that's all it does. But like maybe I mouse over move, and in extended tooltip mode it would say right click on the ground in order to order this move, like to give a unit this command quicker, like some condensed way to say right click on terrain, does that, and then you mouse over attack, and it says right click on enemy unit, orders to attack, something like that. So there'd be like a little bit more going on there, right? And then it would under attack, it would also say like when ordered on ground, just similar to like right clicking on ground, but like when ordered on ground, unit will attack any units in the area on the way, something like that. Like there's got to be some way to do it that way so that players who've never played an RTS before can take a look at that, right? And there would probably need to be a dedicated tutorial map for that sort of thing. For one, because I would still want to provide new players with a way to learn outside of like the first mission of a campaign, because I feel like it would muddy the waters too much of what they were trying to learn. But I do think that once the tutorial is there, once the extended tooltip thing is there, in addition to everything else being implemented, I don't see any reason why you would still play the original campaign beyond, like, learning some sort of aspect of historical, like, oh, this is what the game used to look like, or whatever. Like, this is a historical account. This is what Blizzard released. I'm not saying that I'm gonna like redraft the cutscenes and redraft the lore. Like, if you're looking for what the canon experience was, not only historically speaking, but also canon in regards to the actual lore of the game, you would still play the original. So it's not a complete replacement. But as far as a gameplay experience is concerned, it will be so much superior to the original game that I see no reason on a gameplay level to ever bother with the original game at that point. And yeah, a lot of people have referred to Hydra as the Dark Souls of RTS or whatever, but it's not like Dark Souls deals in unfair and just goofy ass gameplay, like knights in full plate armor rolling around instead of actually absorbing damage. So like it's counterintuitive at best and just straight up gimmicky and insulting to the player at worst. Whereas Hydra is completely like the ideal version of Hydra will be the AI is fair, does not cheat, but plays better than you unless you're good enough. And like the AI is the source of interaction, whereas the Dark Souls AI is basically non-existent. They just fall into fucking pits if you lure them in there. They're completely idiotic. So there's not really like I see what they're getting at because they're just focusing on the very surface level element of the difficulty, but the difficulty in Hydra is fair, unlike Dark Souls. Like it's intended to be fair. Right. So like if you were to recommend Hydra to somebody, it would be like on the basis of this actually teaches you how to play an RTS and you have to be able to play an RTS well in order to win. It's like the first single player campaign ever made like that. Like maybe there's some Age of Empires shit or something out there that requires skill. But for the most part it's like just learn how these gimmicks work and then you're all set. So it's I'm not 100% sure exactly how it'll play out, but I don't mind having that be a goal of mine to attempt in the future. Wait, I don't really like that one. I think I'll actually do a thin one over here. It's like there's going to be a wider one that's asphalt right here anyway. I don't mind it being something where players end up looking at it and thinking, "Oh yeah, I've got the ability to actually learn how to play the game." Cool. I don't see anything wrong with that. Right now the challenge isn't exactly fair, but it's definitely something I want to work on. Like, the AI still does cheat with some things about map knowledge, and obviously they have that income multiplier cheat, although it's for different races, it's at different quantities. Like, Protoss only gets 9 instead of 8, whereas Zerg get... Terran get 10, and I think Zerg get 12, so... Like, it's definitely still out of whack, but... All in due time. We will fix those issues up. Still very much a work in progress. Right, so like that has been a long-standing concern of like the idea that a human player who's never played the map is not going to be on the same level of an AI player that... When I was talking about they metagame with map knowledge, I mean they know exactly where enemy units are. Or not exactly, but close enough that it might as well be exactly. That's what I was talking about. But that opens up a different concern where like I'm scripting out like empirical sequences of events where they build, they take this expansion and then they take that expansion and then they take that expansion and they build this structure and then they build that. Like, this is their build order, but they build the first one here and the second one here and the third one there. Some of that stuff is me developing a winning strategy for that, specific to that map. And so the AI doesn't have like a warming up period like the player would, where at first the AI will play worse on the map, and then with a retry, they'll play better on a map because they've adapted. Because they're like, for one, that would be a ridiculous amount of overhead. But for another, I don't even think it would be reasonable to expect that. Like, it's not, I don't think it's required to have an AI that actually engages you. The AI in Hydra will demand that the player understands the map and learns the map, but is it fair if they already know the map by heart because they were programmed to know the map? I can see why people would say that it's not fair in that respect. But at least that's an advantage that you can neutralize by learning yourself. Whereas if the AI has a map hack or some sort of map hack, or the AI has an income multiplier, this is not something that's skill-based. It's just an advantage that they have that is inalienable, that you cannot counteract. Whereas if you know that, hey, there's 1, 2, 3 entrances into this area that I would call my sphere of influence, and my natural is here, my third can be there or there. Like, if you start to build some understanding of what the map actually looks like, if you're really good with fundamentals, you should be able to beat every Hydra mission for the first time without ever having seen the map. And I want to be able to provide tools with the ability to do, or I want the ability to provide players with the tools available to do that, or required to do that. But it's obviously not going to be super easy to do that. So, like, players are not going to have an easy time in Hydra, but that doesn't mean that they shouldn't keep trying, is basically what I'm saying. Right, like, the player is supposed to adapt. And I'm not interested in developing some kind of neural network that's going to adapt on a per map basis or whatever, because, again, that's still an abstraction away from what a player would be. But it's like, the whole point of it is like, oh yeah, I want my AI to feel more like a legitimate opponent or something. Like, I'm not really that worried about that. I think you're going to see pretty solid, you're going to see a nice solid experience out of Hydra where the AI, yeah, there's some abstractions, but there's always going to be abstractions. Like, the AI is never going to get tired. It's never going to have an APM cap. It's never going to forget to use its spellcasters on this unit. Like, it's always going to do some things very well. And it's also not very adaptive. Like, I can hard code certain adaptations into it, but I can't make it so that it, like, the best I could do is maybe create like a class of units where, like, Firebats, Zerglings, Zealots, whatever, like, those are melee units. And if they, or like AoE units like Siege Tanks, High Templar, Archons, Reavers, whatever, like case may be, like, or artillery units. I create a class of units and a bunch of different classes and say, if my enemy is using a unit that belongs to that class, and like that's their composition, then I can react with units that belong to this class. Like, that's pretty much the best I could do for like soft coding adaptation. But it's still not really adaptation. It's still an abstraction on the idea of adaptation. And I'm not really that interested in that anyway. Like, there's going to be certain aspects where, like, yeah, you're not going to be able to just use this strategy and break the AI immediately, because there's more to it than that. There's skill-based expression and micro and all this other stuff. But you should be able to find some solution to the AI's composition, and I don't think that I'm going to bother hard-coding a bunch of adaptations to it. I think, in general, the AI will just try to shore up some of its weaknesses, irrespective of the player's composition. There might be some very specific cases where the AI tries to adapt to what the player is doing. For example, if they're using nukes a lot or something. Or if they, like, rush air, then there's going to be an adaptation where the AI says, all right, I'm going to accelerate Hydras or Spore Colonies or Corsairs or whatever the fuck. Yeah, I mean, I think that the AI in one mission will stay the same, right? Like, it's not going to really evolve its... it's not going to change too much in regards to how it reacts to certain units. But more tech will be unlocked later on, more... the larger maps, more players... The game state itself, the map state, I should say, itself will change, and what is available to the players will change, including the AI players. So, of course, the AI is going to evolve in that respect, but it's not going to be like the AI was playing worse and now they're playing better. You know what I mean? It's that the AI has more tools now, or the AI has different tools in terms of like map assets. Like they've got more or less resources, they've got more or less bases immediately surrounding them, they're more or less vulnerable based on the map state. So they're going to behave differently as a result of that. But it's going to be the same personality. Like it's going to be the same basic code running all of its like, this is my attack composition, this is my attack strategy, this is what I prefer to attack as far as targets go, and this is my expansion strategy, and this is my build order, and like all that stuff is going to be relatively similar, if not identical, between maps. At best, you're going to see like them using different map specific things like coordinates, right? They're going to build their unit structures in different areas. They're going to send their units to attack from different pathways. That stuff is going to change on a per map basis. But you're right that the AI itself, the personality, is going to remain consistent. It's just that you might see more sides to it once there's more tools available, or different tools in the case of the map state. So, like, people were talking a while ago about like how, well, obviously the last map of the campaign will be more difficult than the previous map. And since I was going for an AI focused approach, they were like, well, obviously the AI will be better in the last map compared to the first map. But it's not really better. It's just that you're seeing more strategies to it. It's the same level of, like, it's the same kind of personality. When I make some change to the way that the AI attack compositions work, I'm making that change for all maps, right? So if I decide that this player builds too few siege tanks and I add some more siege tanks, that's going to change the AI behavior in every single map. So it's just some of the ways that I plan on making it so that it's kind of modular, and really all we're changing is like how the AI adapts to map-specific things, which is sort of like what the player will do. Like the player is not going to radically change their personality or playstyle, most likely. Maybe they will, and they have the ability to do that because they're players. But I'm not hard-coding in a bunch of changes like that to the AI because that would fly counter to the whole design philosophy of that AI. And I think that this design philosophy is the best design philosophy that I can achieve. And just in general, I think it's probably the best design philosophy out there for the purpose of designing this sort of thing. Well, like, for example, Dagoth and Zaz are two Cerebrits, and Zaz prefers air units, Dagoth prefers, like, Hydra armies and lurkers and stuff. So, like, their compositions are going to be different. And in the same sense, eventually we'll have Gorgoleths enabled, probably in like the second mission of the Terran campaign. So you're going to see a new unit that's never been in the game before, that wasn't in the previous mission, but Zaz is in both missions, and Zaz uses Gorgoleths when they are available. That's the kind of changes that are going to be happening on a per map basis. It's like, oh, there's new tools available, so I'm going to use these because they fit in with my playstyle. Or there's new tools available, I'm going to be aware of those because they might counter my playstyle. And so I have some small set of my code dedicated to responding to that, like sending some detectors after nukes, or building spore colonies when I get attacked by wraiths, or whatever. Or getting a certain upgrade to increase my range for missile turrets when the enemy attacks me with guardians, or like, you know, like something very particular that, again, I'm going to try to avoid using because like hard-coded response feels kind of silly. But I don't think the AI will try to reinvent itself, if that makes any sense. Like, it's not really about that. Trying to outline where the giant upper part of this mountain is going to start. I don't want to link those two together, but... well, at least right now I don't. Might decide that's the smarter way to later do it. Alright, so we've done that. This might end up being where Randall's starting location is. Nice roomy expanse around it, too. And you got this little pathway over here. Should shrink this up a little bit. Yeah, I ended up adding like asteroid style terrain. It's just placeholder until DF makes something better, but the idea is that there will be asteroids and whatnot. I also made a map crap one where there was ice terrain, but instead of water, it was space. The idea was it was the ice wall. It's flat Earth theory or something. It was something stupid like that. Oh, okay. Yeah, I don't have. The thing is, I don't have like space station style. Like, it sounds like what you would want is like the space station tiles themselves ported to Badlands or Jungle tile set. In Hydra, Badlands is nighttime right now. We haven't made a separate daytime Badlands tile set. I guess I should add that to the list actually. But yeah, it's up there. All right. Well, I think that'll be doing it for me. I definitely have to skedaddle pretty soon. Unfortunately, I do have a hard out today because I go back to work. But that'll be it for now. So I had a good time doing all the talking and philosophizing. I didn't get as much work done on this map as I maybe thought I could, but I also didn't even necessarily think that I would be doing this yet today, so I'm also fine with that. Let me just save the brush here. All right. I guess I already had some of those set up. It's pretty funny. Yeah, Space Station plus installation will be made because of the installation map in the Zerg campaign. So I'll definitely be making some blends for that. Monsters versus aliens. I don't even know about that one. I just have the outline right now because I'm going to be turning like all where the low ground is in here. It will be a high ground, like a stacked high dirt cliff. I just haven't added that stuff yet. It takes a little bit of time to do that. Like all the jungle is going to be asphalt. I just haven't taken the time to actually manually paint it yet. I'm still figuring out the layout. Well, I guess that'll do it then. Once again, another productive stream because we are epic men. Thanks for joining me today. Enjoy the Starcraft campaign playthrough videos if you haven't already. And otherwise, I'll be seeing you guys tomorrow for another one of these. So bye.